Hi everybody, we are live. Welcome to my channel. My name is Anita. I have a channel and a website called Ketogenic Woman. Dr. Chaffee will be here any moment. I have no doubt he is coming all the way from Australia, so we have to give him some grace there. But I do have a few announcements to go through. Like I said, my name is Anita. I'm about to be 66 years old, and I have, for those of you who don't know me, because I know a lot of people are watching from Dr. Chaffee's channel tonight, and you may not have met me before or seen my channel. So I've lost 145 pounds to this point. I went from low carb to keto to ketovore to carnivore. I do have a before picture here. So that is me at my highest weight. I feel better today at the age of almost 66 than I did when I was, 50, 40, 30. I would say even 20. Just completely different lifestyle now. So that is me. We have two moderators on the channel tonight. We have Melissa, who also, you will see her as Copper's Kitchen. I know a band called Copper Cove, that's why I always say Copper's Cove. But Copper's Kitchen, she is one of the moderators, and Bonnie is here as well, moderating. And, just keeping things going and providing links for you guys and that sort of thing. And so next week, for those of you who do follow my channel, you know that, or you may not know, but this week the channel crossed over 100,000 subscribers. So I want to thank you guys so much for doing that, getting me to that point, and all of your support. Next week on this channel at the same time, which is 7 p.m. Eastern, we are having a live stream party. There's going to be all kinds of special guests popping in and out. I'm just going to show you there's a preview of the thumbnail. It's out there now, so yeah, this should be fun. I don't know who all is coming, but quite a few people that I've talked to about it have said they are coming and are going to participate. So that'll be kind of fun. Okay, so let's get that off now. And yeah, so like I said, I'm just waiting for Dr. Chaffee to arrive. How about if I announce this while he's here, or while we're waiting for him to come? He is going to be on Woman's World. There he is on the cover. That is coming out next week. So if you guys are in the grocery store, please look for that. The more people that buy that and show an interest in, carnivore subjects, the better. Because we need to tell people with our dollars. We need to tell the stores we want, good quality meat. We need to tell the magazines we want to hear about this. We want to talk about this, and so get out there and buy that magazine. And somebody in the comments said they already saw it. Well, that's cool. Well, I'm going to look for it. I'm in Canada, so sometimes we get things just a little bit later. So, okay. Let's get that off the screen. And okay, so I'm just gonna go through and do a few shout outs while we're waiting. And let me see here. We have, I clicked on her and then it went away. I saw Italian Gone Carnivore. Hello, Anna Maria, so nice to see you here. Carnivore Boss is here. Hi, Regina. Let's see, who else? Who else is here? Thank you guys so much for coming. Peggy and Eve and Denise, Late to the Table Carnivore. Thank you. Oh, she likes my hair this way. Thank you very much for that. Um, let me see if there's any questions that I know how to answer. Da, da, da. Oh, okay. Amber has been carnivore since November and is concentrating on working out and building strength. Thoughts on higher protein versus, and I will, of course, get him to answer this when he's here. But so I have also been working out, and protein is what you want to focus on because that's your muscle building thing. High fat is great. You don't want to go too low on the fat, but I had some coaching from Alice and Kevin, and they counseled me to increase my protein in order to build the muscle. I wasn't even eating enough protein to maintain what muscle I had at the time, and so they went that way with me. So just passing on what I learned from them. And so here again, I know these questions are for Dr. Chaffee, and I'm not getting rid of them. I'm just going through. But I actually saw in Dr. Chaffee's group, he answered a question just like this, that someone was on antibiotics. And he said to get yogurt with live cultures in it and eat it with your meat. And then after a couple of weeks, your gut will colonize with those live cultures to help that. I don't know about the high stomach acid part of your question, but gut issues, take a look at live yogurt with live cultures and eat it with your meat. So we'll see what he says when he does come. Okay. Oh, I heard a pop. He's here. He is here. Let's get you. I started answering questions.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay.
That
is okay. Yeah. So so what I've done is I've done my usual announcements, and I haven't really introduced you yet because I was waiting for you to come. But I did show them your upcoming cover for Women's World magazine. So that's pretty exciting. Congratulations on that. And I told them all to go out and buy it because the more people who buy carnivore related stuff, it's better for all of us. So let me just do a little quick backtrack here. Dr. Chaffee, for those of you from my channel, I know that those of you who are watching from his channel, you guys know all about him. But there's a lot of ladies that follow me on my channel. And so Dr. Chaffee is a medical doctor, an American medical doctor, neurosurgical resident, who has been researching the optimal nutrition for human performance and health. And he feels that so-called chronic diseases that they treat as doctors are caused by the food we eat. And I think a lot of us are starting to feel that way. He began university at the age of 16, which blows my mind, studying molecular and cellular biology with a minor in chemistry. He has an MD from the Royal College of Surgeons. And you're also an athlete as well. Very obvious with that. Kickboxing, rugby player, MMA fighting, all that. Oh my goodness. And a volunteer in the refugee camps in Bangladesh. Like, I'm just, it's awesome that you're doing what you're doing. So
thank you.
Let's just start a bit with the origin. I do have a few. There are a few questions in the thing already, but I do want to address a few things. I saw a video one time. It kind of had your origin. You're sitting in a class at the University of Washington, I think it was, and your professor is talking about the toxins in everyday plants that we all eat, or most of us were eating, and what was that like for you? Like, how did that change your life?
Well, it was quite surreal. Obviously, we've been told our entire lives that vegetables are great for you, that these are the best things on earth, even though it didn't really make inherent sense to me because I always hated them. And even as an adult, I hated them. I was that kid at home that I would fight tooth and nail against my parents, against eating vegetables. And it never really dawned on me that isn't natural, that animals in the wild don't hate the taste of their food because they wouldn't eat it, and they would die out if they hated the taste of the food that was best for them. They simply wouldn't eat it and they would die. Now, there are things that we can do as scientists to change the taste of things and to augment things. Food scientists are very, very clever people, and they can augment flavors and add in flavors that are very addictive and exciting to us and make us want to eat more and more and more. But if something tastes bad, then that should warn you that there's something bad in it. And so that bitter taste, that harmful taste, even the strong taste of spices, that's a warning. Your brain is warning you there's a chemical in there that's harmful to you. There's even a book that I got over Christmas called The Most Delicious Poisons. And it's all about the spices. It's all about spices and seasonings that we use. And these are actually the most toxic elements of that plant that have that very strong flavor. They don't have the strong flavor. Your brain is giving you a strong signal saying, don't eat this. And that's because that you have to have an inherent check and balance in order to survive in the wild. You know, we have books now, we teach people, and we teach people the wrong things oftentimes, and that can go against our nature and our natural instincts. But those natural instincts were there first, and those natural instincts were there to guide us and protect us in the wild. And you have things called evolutionary traps, and that's what food scientists use, things that we recognize as, ooh, that's safe, that's good, and they copy that and they replicate that and they put that in food or sugar because we recognize fructose as something safe that we can eat. We can get a piece of energy from this. It's not going to poison us in the short term. And it's such a small amount that we would see this in the wild anyway, and it would be seasonal. It'd be once a year for a couple of weeks, and that's it, and in very small amounts. And so we recognize that, ooh, that's safe, and so we put sugar and fructose in everything, and that's called an evolutionary trap because our brains are saying, ooh, that's safe, eat it. And so we're eating more and more and more and more and more and more and more. But if something tastes bad, it's probably bad. And so we were learning this. I'd already taken botany, and I'd already taken biology, and I'd already come across these concepts before, but then you never apply them to the things that you're eating on a daily basis.
Right.
And so, but he applied those. And so he was saying that not only were these toxins in plants, they were the plants that we were eating, the fruits and vegetables that we were eating as a regular mainstay of our diets. And that they were, because there's a cancer biology class, we were looking at carcinogens, and that there were actually a very high number of carcinogens, namely 136 just in Brussels sprouts. This is 20 plus years ago that they discovered this. I'm sure there's more now, over 100 in mushrooms, just normal white mushrooms. Obviously, the other mushrooms will kill you. I mean, there's over 10,000 different kinds of mushrooms. Most of them will just kill you. And so the ones we eat, they're not just completely safe. They have a lot of toxins in them. They have a lot of things that can be carcinogenic. And all of these things had dozens and dozens. I mean, everything. Any leaf or tuber or fruit that you would eat had dozens, if not over 100, known carcinogens in them. And they're abundant. There are over 10,000 times more naturally occurring toxins in the plant than the pesticides we spray on them by weight. And mushrooms, for instance, are hundreds of times more likely to cause cancer in lab studies than pesticides such as ALAR. That was a study out of UC Berkeley with Professor Bruce Ames in the late 80s. Actually published a series of papers. But so this was something that's been well known. And Bruce Ames' conclusion was, well, since we know fruits and vegetables are good for you, obviously the pesticides aren't that bad, since the fruits and vegetables are way worse. I would come at it from the other direction, that there's that we can't conclude how good or bad fruits and vegetables or even pesticides are from that paper. All we can conclude, the only facts and evidence in that paper are there are 10,000 times more naturally occurring toxins in plants, and they're hundreds of times more likely to cause cancer than the pesticides. That's the only thing objectively that you can take from that study. And everything else is just a value judgment. So again, we're going over this, and he's telling us all this, and we're absolutely gobsmacked, just blown away. I remember we were all just looking around wildly, looking for someone who was in on the joke. And I was just like, someone has to be in on this. This has to be a joke. Who's laughing? Who's smirking? And I was looking for a TA anywhere around the classroom that was just sitting there, doing something like that, because it had to be a joke. And the rest of the class was too. Everyone was actually wildly looking around. Every single person in the class was probably about 30 of us, wildly looking around for someone in on the joke. And no one was joking. No one
Wow.
was laughing. And so it finally dawned on us that, okay, this guy's serious. And I remember thinking to myself, but vegetables are still good for you though, right? And as soon as I thought that to myself, he just sort of gave us a funny look and he said, I don't eat salad. I don't eat vegetables. I don't let my kids eat vegetables. Plants are trying to kill you. And at that moment, I was like, right, never
Wow.
eating a plant again. I'm done. And I went to the grocery store after that. And I was really in a daze. And I honestly don't remember anything else from that day.
Well, it's
It's
not
just,
something you expect to hear from your
no.
professor.
No. And so I honestly don't remember anything else that day. I have no idea what else we talked about. I just remember that. But that's so vividly painted in my memory. And I constantly hope that like someone will hear this story and one of those other people in that class will be like, I was in that class, we can talk about it because it was crazy. And I was really, really struck by that. And I wondered what everyone else thought about it as well and what they did. And what I did is I went to the grocery store and I said, what the hell doesn't have plants? Everything has plants.
Right.
Everything's mixed with plants or including plants or is only plants. And obviously the produce aisle, pastas and breads and all these sorts of things, all from plants. And so, okay, well, what the hell do I eat? And I was just walking around aimlessly and I just randomly came across some eggs. I was like, okay, eggs. Eggs don't come from a plant. I'll get some eggs. I came across some meat. And I was like, okay, meat. Meat doesn't come from plants. I'll get some meat. And I just ate eggs and meat for the next 5 years. I've never felt better in my entire life. And I wasn't thinking about it. I wasn't doing a carnivore diet. I wasn't even thinking that this is actually ancestrally appropriate, that this is what we've been eating for millions of years. I knew that since I was a kid. The humans are apex predators, top of the food chain. By definition, carnivores. And I'm like, well, hey, look, I'm eating as a carnivore. That makes sense.
Wow.
There are poisons in plants.
Yeah.
It didn't dawn on me at the time. All I knew was plants were trying to kill me. I'm not touching these things. And I felt amazing. I've never felt better before or after in my life until right now. I'm doing it again. And because I didn't really know how significant what I was doing was, I sort of slipped off of it. And especially when I was traveling, I couldn't really get exactly what I wanted.
Sure. Yeah.
And living abroad. And, and so I just sort of slipped off of it and then it just stopped being used to doing it. But then years later, over 6 years ago now, came across information. I was like, no, humans actually are carnivores. It's just the kind of animal we are. And it dawned on me, that's what I was doing for those 5 years. I've never felt better in my entire life. And I've always been trying to get back to that and how I felt and how I performed. And I never could. After that, 25 and on, 25 to 35, I continued playing rugby. 25 to 29, playing professional rugby. I never felt as good as I did in my early 20s. I'm like, oh, I'm just getting older, I guess. But then at 38, I went back onto this, and in 2 weeks, I felt like I was 22 again, and I started playing professional rugby again. I felt amazing. And I was able to perform at the same level I could when I was 22, except now I had another 15, 16 years of experience. And so, it was great. And I wasn't in nearly the shape that I was at 22, but I felt fantastic and I could easily get in shape. I mean, I was just running like hell and training really hard. It just felt amazing doing it. So it was just a wonderful experience. And I've been just digging into the research since then, trying to figure out what we know, what we can prove, what we still need to find out, and trying to share that with other people so they can improve their lives too.
Yeah, and so you have so many videos, and so I wanted to tell you my two favorite videos because I watched a lot of them, but the two that really stuck out for me, and they are videos that I think my audience can relate to. A lot of the people that come on my channel are women like me. I'm 66. There's women who are my age and 70s and 80s who are trying to eat this way. So those two favorite videos are the one where you interviewed Hal Cramner, who owns some nursing homes, and I mean, that man has sent patients home who came to him with dementia and then they could go home again. And I took care of my mom during the last 5 years of her life with Alzheimer's, and there, once she went in there, there was no going home. I mean,
Yeah.
the stuff they feed you there. I, that video, it made me cry, and it also made me hopeful, for our future, for the future of women and men that are, my age and are wondering what's going to happen in 10 years or 15 or 20 years. So what do you know about dementia and Alzheimer's and the carnivore diet, from speaking with people like Hal Cramner?
Well, it was amazing to speak to Hal, because I thought that was something that we should do already. There are already studies going back at least a decade showing that on interventional trials in humans, that a high-fat ketogenic diet was a better treatment for Alzheimer's disease than any medication ever trialed. So that was already in the literature, and I came across that, and I was like, well, that's amazing. And that people with higher LDL cholesterol had lower rates of Alzheimer's, which is protective against Alzheimer's, protective against Parkinson's, protective against other forms of dementia, which makes sense. Your brain is made out of cholesterol. It's made out of fat. Why are we avoiding fat and trying to reduce our cholesterol like it's some sort of plague? We make it. It's a natural substance in our body, and you're not going to make something in your body to in a correct physiological state. Your body's not going to just pump out a bunch of damaging materials that's going to kill you, unless you're in some sort of disease state. And so just the normal natural state should not do that. And people need to realize that when we've, in the first death from a heart attack in America was shown on autopsy in 1912 in America. And then 20 years later, it was the number one killer in America. The first one showed up in 1912. The whole 1800s and before, there really wasn't anything. There's one obscure reference in the literature at a conference where people presented, hey, look at this weird thing. It looks like there's this thrombus in someone's coronary artery. That was it. One thing. And 130 years later, nothing in the literature until 1912. People didn't, I was like, what is this? No one believes this. And nothing else before that in the literature, nothing, right? And people had familial hypercholesterolemia, the exact same percentage of the population had genetically familial hypercholesterolemia, and it just didn't present like that. That is going to kill you. Your body's going to make LDL, and LDL is going to kill you. Why wasn't it killing people before that? It doesn't make sense. And then Alzheimer's disease specifically, again, was a brand new disease in the early 1900s. It was first presented as a single case study by Dr. Alzheimer's at a European conference in 1906. That was the first mention of Alzheimer's dementia or anything else similar to it by any other name in the literature. That's it. There was nothing before that. Oh, people were dying in their 30s. No, they weren't. Average life expectancy from birth was in the late 30s, but that's because infant mortality was 3 out of 5. When 3 out of 5 kids die at an early age, that will bring down that average, won't it? People have to live a lot longer than that in order to bring it up, even into the 30s. Right. So people were absolutely getting older. Socrates, 2,500 years ago, they killed him, and he was 76. They had to take him out with a plant, by the way. They gave him hemlock, and he clearly wasn't senile. He was very sharp. And it wasn't like, wow, he's the oldest guy in the world. This is crazy how old this guy lived. There's nothing like that. There's no mention about, oh my God, this is just insane how old this guy is. 76, very normal. And they had to kill him, right? So no, this is not something recent. This is new. This is something new that we're doing to our bodies and our brains. And it's not cholesterol. We've always had cholesterol. We've always been eating meat. We haven't had these wonderful heart-healthy polyunsaturated fats that everybody needs to go on. They didn't even exist before the 1800s. And so why weren't we all just dying of heart disease then? Because these things didn't exist, right? Yeah. Well, it's because they didn't exist that heart disease didn't exist. That's the whole point. They were putting in unnatural chemicals in our body, and it's destroying our body. It's destroying our brain. And that's what we're seeing with Alzheimer's dementia. More and more people are getting it. One of the professors in my medical school said that if you live long enough, everyone will get Alzheimer's. Why? No one got it before. My great grandfather was born in 1875. He died in 1975. That's a little longer than 30 years.
Yes.
People were still going to medical school back then. They were not graduate. They were graduating from graduate school and professional degrees and things like that in their late 20s, and then they had careers. Like the
Yeah.
idea that people were dying in their 30s is asinine. They were not getting these diseases. These diseases did not exist. And yes, people were living long enough to see them. And if it was just that it would just get older and then it gets, and we just haven't been living long enough, why is it that people are getting Alzheimer's younger and younger and younger and younger, and getting diabetes younger and younger and younger and
And
younger,
they're
and getting
calling
cancer
it
younger
type
and younger?
3
Type
diabetes.
3 diabetes, that's it.
Yeah.
And PCOS is type 4
Oh,
diabetes. Well, your body is getting broken down and damaged by this deranged metabolic state that we're in, and we're hounding and damaging our body with excessive amounts of sugar, carbohydrates, and alcohol. But we're drinking far less alcohol now than we have historically, and or at least people are much more conscious of it now. And that's not the major driver here. So this is something that I wanted to do. I've friends of mine that run nursing homes and those sorts of facilities, and I wanted to try to get these sort of things going in their facilities. Difficult to do because I'm not in Seattle anymore, but it's something that I really, really was excited to see Hal doing. And he has, I believe,
yes.
4 nursing homes, in the Phoenix area.
I have
And he
linked
started
that video below for
Hmm.
people to watch it because I think it's really worth watching.
I think so too. And that's the thing. He's getting people home.
Yeah.
He's rehabilitating these people, and he's getting them better, and he's getting them to the point that they're more active. They're doing things. Their brain is working again. And some of these people, their families come and see them. They're saying, "Hey, I don't think my mom needs to be here anymore. I think we could take her home." And he's thrilled about that. Like that's exactly what you want. And I mean, some people look at it as a business, like, no, we want this person in here forever. It's like, okay, well, they're going to die, and then you have to replace them anyway. So why not get
Hmm.
them home and then replace them? And then you're going to be much more popular because people are saying, hey, these people are fixing Alzheimer's. I'm not putting my mom or my dad there to die. I'm putting them in there to get better and come back home
Yeah.
and learn the skills like a rehab facility. And that is a much better model, where you get people better, you get them home, and you teach them how to stay well. And so I think it's absolutely amazing what he's doing. There is plenty of evidence. This is not just some fly-by-night sort of harebrained scheme that he just came up with himself. This is in the literature. And other people are doing this as well. There are other people doing this. They do sort of ketogenic diets for patients. Some
Yes.
of them are still not getting it, with the whole cholesterol being a scam sort of thing and being necessary for the brain. So they say, oh, you do more plant-based, but still keto and things like that. And you'll get good results with keto. It won't be nearly as good by doing a more plant-based version of keto than a meat-based version of keto,
Right.
because your brain needs these fats, these animal
Yes.
fats
Yes.
and proteins, and the different toxins that are in plants
Yeah.
cause harm too. It's not just the ketones. So yeah, no, if people haven't seen that, it's highly encourage them to watch it, because
Yeah,
it's very
absolutely.
inspiring.
I watched it twice,
Oh,
and
nice.
with the idea of the aging people getting better, that brings me to the second favorite video, and that's of the carnivore rancher, who's from
Mm,
Alberta, which
hmm.
is here's this video. This woman, you guys, is 83 years old and has been eating meat for 65 years.
And that's a recent picture. That's not an old picture, and
Yes.
it's not photoshopped.
Well, I saw the interview. I saw you guys
Mm,
talking, and I was mesmerized by how articulate she was.
mm,
Because my mom at 83, she passed at 85 of her Alzheimer's.
mm.
But at
Oops.
83, she could barely carry on a basic conversation. This woman at 83 is planning new projects that are going to require a lot of physical and mental work, and I was completely blown away by that
Yeah,
video.
yeah. Well, at 82, she and her husband decided to buy a new ranch, basically
Yes.
save a ranch down in Colombia, and sort of bring it up because there was going to be loss to the family and things like that. So they're okay. Well, we should do that. And so now they spend a couple months down there a year trying to bring this farm up to production, and that's on top of their ranch in Alberta, and so I've been to her ranch, and I've visited her there. She is I've seen her birth certificate. I've seen her commercial driver's license. I've seen her passport. They all match up. They all say born in 1941. And so, and I've met her kids and her grandkids, and I've seen her great grandkids in pictures.
She had great
Her 25-year-old grandchildren. I've met them, So this is an actual thing, and she she looks half her age, if that, and she moves like a healthy 30-year-old, like a fit 30-year-old.
Yeah.
She's up at 5 a.m. every day working on that ranch, and she's working until after dark every single day. And some days she's working overnight through the next day. She was saying that when you're baling hay, when you have that, you just bale hay until you're done.
Yeah.
And so she, a couple years ago, so in her 80s, she was baling hay for 36 hours straight.
Wow.
She just kept going, and she just kept going until she was done.
It's just so mind blowing. The fact that she's been eating meat only for 65 years does not look like there's any illness going on there. I mean,
no.
Like all these stories you hear, you're going to have a heart attack, you're going to have this, you're going to have that.
No.
I mean, she is like the picture of health.
She is, and she only goes to the doctor for her yearly checkup for her commercial driver's license, because she has to, in order to stay able to drive a big rig. She has to get that, and she has no health issues. She's on no medications at 82. She's turning 83, and she's just a picture of health. I've seen her at 82 hop over a 5-foot tall fence to get in and corral a raging bull, an actual raging bull. And I was just like, I'm not going in there. And it's like, hope you're okay, because I will not be jumping in to rescue you. I probably would try, but it didn't need to. And but she literally just hopped just over it, quick as you like. And it was just like
that just gave me so much hope when I saw that video. I was like, wow, we seniors, because I'm one now. We can do so much. Like, there's just so much more left. It's never too late.
No, and the thing is that it's not elderly. That's the thing. You're not elderly.
I don't feel elderly in any way at this point.
But you're literally middle-aged, because genetically we're designed to live 120 years. So 60s, 70s, 80s, that's middle-aged, right? So that's not late-aged. That's not a senior citizen. That's just in the context of our decrepitude from eating the wrong thing and poisoning ourselves. And then we're calling that elderly, because we're dying and decay. We're dying young and decaying decades early.
Yes.
And that's why we're dying young, because we're getting low-grade toxic exposure, and we're not getting proper nutrition, and we're just destroying our bodies slowly but surely, and we're just getting more and more sick as we go. And we're dying young. We're dying 50, 60 years early. And
if you Google, I'm a Googler because, I'm not a doctor. You know this stuff, but I have to Google everything. When I
Google a lot too.
when I Google what are the most common conditions that affect midlife women, and I'm talking 50-ish and up, it's depression, osteoporosis, type 2 diabetes, and for men and women, heart disease, stroke, and cancer. Now, and then if you take, say, for example, osteoporosis, and you look up what they recommend for you to eat, they tell you to avoid red meat. So
Yeah, don't avoid phytates and oxalates, which are known to strip calcium out of your blood and stop you from absorbing them in the first place. Stop red meat that has absolutely nothing harmful in it. Makes perfect sense. I mean,
Right.
it is funny. This is when I started investigating this more and more. It started picking at a lot of threads. A lot of my understanding of medicine really, really was undone. And I saw just how much of medicine is complete conjecture and based on that, and just based on myth and propaganda. It is not science. My God, it is not science. Some things, scientific applications can be applied to medicine, and that's why it has the semblance of a scientific endeavor. But my goodness, our understanding is almost all of it is not based in actual science. A lot of these things are based on conjecture. These things are based on a theory that someone influential had 50 years ago, and it just stayed. So like the reason we need fiber is because Dr. Burkitt, who discovered Burkitt's lymphoma, very famous doctor, he was in Africa and he said, hey, look at this. These Africans, they're having very large bowel motions. And I think that's because they're eating a whole bunch of fiber and they have low rates of bowel cancer. Fiber must protect against bowel cancer. That was it.
Yeah.
There's no scientific endeavor, no study, anything. It was just a hypothesis.
Yeah.
It was a hypothesis based on observation. But because he was a very famous doctor, and this is what you'll hear the vegans say, he was so famous. He was so brilliant. Oh my God. And then he said it. Well, it's appealing to authority, and that's dumb. There was no scientific endeavor. There was no actual study. It was just his idea. It was just an idea that he had. I'm sure it was a very well-meaning idea, but it's wrong. But that's what's in the literature now, because that he said it, people bought it, and they just started repeating it. And now it's in textbooks. And so, and then you just vilify meat. No one vilified meat until very recently. It was the sugar companies that did that to try to paint the blame on something else. We've always been eating meat. Heart disease was new. And we have people with familial hypercholesterolemia. Again, exactly the same distribution of people with FH in the genetic population before 1912, when the first heart attack showed up in the literature, and yet no heart attacks, right? Nothing reported anyway. And so if this was the number one killer of this massive thing, we didn't have these wonderful heart healthy fiber supplements and wonderful heart healthy polyunsaturated fats, and we weren't like actively avoiding meat, this should have been rampant. I mean, the people just should have been dropping like flies. So, but it wasn't, right? And so they vilified meat. They said that meat was bad because cholesterol was bad. That was it. They say cholesterol is bad. Cholesterol exists in meat. Saturated fat increases cholesterol. Therefore, meat is bad. Stop eating it, or eat chicken breasts, right?
Yeah.
Because it has low fat, low cholesterol.
Right.
So you just like vilify these things, and then you paint the entire world with the same brush. It's like, meat's bad. Oh, don't eat meat. Don't eat meat. Don't eat meat. What does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with osteoporosis? Do lions not have bones now? Did they just stop? They just stop having the need for proper nutrition and calcium and amino acids to make the collagen to build their bones and keep them strong, because they just eat meat. 70% of animals eat other animals.
Yeah. Are they doing more studies now, like for a carnivore diet? Is anything happening in that respect? Yeah.
There are a lot of them. I mean, I get messages from people all the time. People that are nutritionists, they're doctors, they're researchers, or the nutritional PhD candidates, and they're saying, I want to do something on the carnivore diet, looking at these specific diseases. There are a lot of people doing this now, and there are thousands of studies on human and animal on ketogenic diets. Ketogenic diets are the most rigorously studied diets on Earth.
Okay.
It's not this garbage epidemiological survey. We said, in the last 2 years, how many pretzels have you eaten? How the hell would you know that?
Yeah, right.
And so, I mean, those are useless. I mean, those are purely ludicrous. But that's what all the plant-based ones do, because they know that plant-based diets are garbage, and so they have to hide these things in fictitious and fraudulent studies to make it appear as if plant-based diets are better than than meat-based diets. And they don't even check it against meat-based diet. They check it against the standard American processed food diet. And so, again, just, utterly useless. And they call things meat. They call things like lasagna and pizza meat, right? So it's, oh, you eat more meat and you're going to die. It's like, well, it's not only meat, buddy. And so, these things are fraudulent. But the ketogenic diets, these are interventional trials, randomized controlled trials. And they're large studies in multiple different arenas for multiple different diseases. And it is shown to be an extremely beneficial diet. For weight loss, the ketogenic diets show to be better than the DASH diet. And anytime you structure these well, and there's different kinds of ketogenic diets and different studies say, oh, well, this low carb diet didn't show any improvement on whatever. You read the study, and it's just like, okay, first of all, low carb is not the same as no carb. Right. How many carbs were you eating? Look at that. They actually didn't change the amount of carbs. They had basically the same amount of carbs. So that's not a ketogenic diet. So that's a lie. It's just a false headline. But a carnivore diet is a ketogenic diet. And so when you look at the well-designed ketogenic diets studies, and you see that they cause huge benefit, like in Alzheimer's, then you can extrapolate from that as well, because a carnivore diet is a ketogenic diet. And so, this should apply. Right. And so, and it does, when we see this, but there are more and more studies coming out now because more people are getting interested in it, because more people know that it's a thing, and people are seeing what it's doing for themselves. They're seeing what it's doing for their family. They're seeing what they're doing in the literature. And, and so they're starting to say, great, well, let's put it to paper and flesh this out.
I just want to ask you, and I think some questions are piling up. Now, we only have you for about another 20 minutes, right? Because you have another thing you have to go to. So, so I want to ask about supplements, because, thinking about middle-aged women, can I get everything I need from meat? Or are there any supplements I should be taking as I get older?
Well, any supplements that you're not getting from your food, you can. I mean, you should be able to get everything you can from meat. That's the whole idea, is that if we're eating our natural diet, there should be everything in there. And so you shouldn't be deficient in anything. Now, the meat that we're eating now isn't wild mastodon like we normally would eat, or even wild buffalo, or wild anything. And the wild animals have a higher density of nutrients. And so do regeneratively raised grass-fed and finished beef. They objectively have more nutrients. And so it may be that someone may not be able to get enough from Safeway beef, but so they might add in some liver and kidneys and heart or things like that. Generally, that is going to be more than enough. As we age, it can be more difficult to get we might have absorption issues, and people might have autoimmune disease like pernicious anemia, where it attacks the part of the stomach that makes intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor binds to B12, and you absorb that complex. You cannot absorb B12 in your gastrointestinal tract without intrinsic factor. So if someone has that issue, then you'll need to supplement under the tongue, things like that. And people do, so that's something to be aware of, that if you're not getting enough B12 from your food and from your from liver, which has a ton of B12, it might be because of that. You should get that checked. But generally, no. Generally, you just eat meat and be happy. And if you add in a bit of organs, that should cover everything. The best thing to do is just check. People should probably check folate. That's probably the one thing that I would check for everybody. And that's because people have an MTHFR gene mutation that makes it more difficult for them to utilize folate, and so they may need to add in a bit of liver, and that's it. Liver will cover it. And so people starting a carnivore diet will be nutritionally deficient, and so having more nutritionally dense foods like some of the organs on top of the meat will help catch you up. Or maybe you're extremely deficient in, say, B12 or something else. Might be a good idea to supplement in the short term to get you up to out of critical levels, because under a certain level of B12 you get brain damage. It's not something you want to mess around with. And so if you're on the lower end of B12, you should probably just get a shot or an injection just to bump you up, and then continue on from there. But anybody will be able to catch up with their nutrients that I've seen with just eating meat and water. And if you do have like MTHFR, or you're just really deficient, adding, or if you're just not quite getting everything out of the Safeway meat that you would be from like wild game, then maybe just adding in a bit of liver and the other sort of offal will raise that up. And that's, I've never seen anybody need to take supplements on top of organs. Organs basically are supplements for carnivores, really.
Yeah. When people ask me about supplements, I usually get asked, well, where are you getting your vitamin C from? Where are you getting your calcium from? That kind of thing. And
cow.
I just, well, that's what I say. I say it's all in there. I don't have scurvy. I feel wonderful. So.
Well, but that's that goes back to why we think things, and it's not based on anything. It was just supposition, and so that's the same thing with scurvy and vitamin C. The British sailors started getting scurvy, and they were like, oh gosh, we're missing this vitamin. They start giving them limes, and they were called limeys for that. Well, why weren't every sailor called limeys from every country? It was only the British. And that's because the French and the Spanish and the Portuguese sailors were not getting scurvy. And they were like, look at these guys eating limes, these limeys. They were that was a pejorative. They were making fun of them. Right. Well, why didn't they need it? Because they were giving them meat. And it was the British sailors that were in front of the mast, so just the regular sailors, not the officers, that were getting scurvy. The officers weren't, because officers had meat in their diet. Just the regular sailors, they were just being given gruel and rum, basically. Yeah. And so they were getting scurvy. And so no, you don't actually need that. You don't actually need as much vitamin C if you're eating meat. And also, if you're not eating carbohydrates, you don't need nearly as much vitamin C, because vitamin C and carbohydrates compete for binding receptors on the GLUT4 receptor. And so if you're not eating carbohydrates, you need about a millionth of the vitamin C. But also, if you're eating meat, you don't need vitamin C for collagen, because you already have the building blocks to make collagen, whereas which is hydroproline and hydrolysine, whereas when you aren't getting enough meat, you only get proline and lysine. You need to hydrolyze them, and that's where vitamin C comes in. So when you need to make your own hydroproline and hydrolysine to make properly formed collagen, then you need vitamin C. But if you're just eating meat, you already have an abundance of hydroproline and hydrolysine. You don't need the vitamin C in the first place for that, not for scurvy anyway.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to look at some questions here. A couple of these popped out to me because they're questions that I get a lot. Mm-hmm. Indigo Neely, hi Neely. Are there any reasons to think that going strict carnivore would make a difference when meat-heavy keto hasn't? Do you have any specific recommendations to try a carnivore experiment?
Well, I mean, the whole reason I started carnivore was because I learned how toxic plants were. So, we do a ketogenic diet, and that is great because it gets us into the correct biochemical state that we should be in. I don't think that that's a fasting state. It's not even called a fasting state in biochemistry anymore. My niece is pre-med at University of Washington in Seattle, and she's taking biochemistry, and she said, they don't call it a fed state and a fasting state. They call it carbohydrate metabolism and a non-carbohydrate metabolism, which is much more accurate. And so that non-carbohydrate metabolism is our natural metabolism. That's what we've grown up eating evolutionarily, biologically. And so a lot of really good biochemical processes happen and get turned on when you're not eating carbohydrates. So the ketogenic diet is great because it gets you into that state, lowers your insulin, corrects your hormones in a lot of different ways. But carbohydrates are not the only bad thing on earth. In fact, most things on earth are bad. And so plants make about 1 million different defensive chemicals because they're stationary. They can't run away or fight back like a gazelle can. And so they're sitting ducks, they're target, they're prey. And so they have to be able to protect themselves. And they do. And they use chemical defenses and deterrence. This is why if you get lost in the woods and you run out of food, you can't just eat any random plant. Most of them will kill you or make you very sick. And the same is true of spinach as it is of eucalyptus or hemlock. They have toxins in it. It's just we have some capacity to detoxify and weather the storm. And that doesn't mean that they're completely safe for us. It just means that they are less toxic to us than other things. And so you have that low grade buildup of toxic exposure. Sometimes high grade cassava roots can kill you. There's bitter cassava, there's sweet cassava, and there's cyanide in there. And it's bitter because it has so much cyanide that it can kill you. And if you don't treat that properly, or you just have this low grade exposure and just have enough of it, you can get very, very sick. There are things called veggie chips in Australia, which are cassava chips, cassava root chips with tapioca powder. That all has cyanide in it. And I was speaking to a patient actually who got very sick from eating these veggie chips. She was carnivore. She just had one handful of these veggie chips, and she was very sick from that. They're directly toxic to your mitochondria and destroy the function of your electron transport chain in your mitochondria. And she looked it up the next day, and she found that these veggie chips had a lot of cyanide in it. And then she looked, and there was actually a rash of people getting sick all across Australia from eating these veggie chips because there was a much higher level of cyanide in this recent batch of veggie chips. So that's really all you're doing. You're just avoiding things that have toxins. You're avoiding things that are going to disrupt your body's normal functioning. And so yes, there's definitely a big advantage to going strict carnivore on top of meat heavy keto, just because you're eliminating out all of those other potential toxins and known toxins. And so, you're going to do better. Meat heavy keto, you're miles ahead of everybody else. And so you're going to be doing a lot better. And then just getting rid of those last bits of plants actually makes a huge, huge difference as well.
So, and that's similar to this question then, where she asked, why can some people eat plants with little to no problems and others can't? Like, for instance, I can't eat nightshades. I just feel so ill when I eat them. And yet other people can eat them with total immunity, or,
with impunity. Yeah. Well, but the thing is, though, is can they? Because, before, you came to this presumably in the last few years. You haven't been doing this for 60 years. And so it's not like, I'm sure you've had tomatoes before. I'm sure you've eaten potatoes before, or had some bell peppers or something like that. But the thing is that when we have all this stuff in our system, we always feel like garbage, and we call that normal. And then so we have all this sort of stuff, and we feel sort of slightly better or worse, but we don't see like the massive effect that tomatoes are going to have, because we have 5,000 other things in our system that are also bringing us down. And then we just consider that normal. That's just how you feel. And then when you get away from this and you see that contrast, and you get, oh my God, I had no idea that I could feel this good. And then you have a tomato, and it's just like, absolutely not, never again. You can see that contrast now. So it could very well be that people, I feel fine. I don't feel like I have a problem with it. I don't think you really know what you feel like yet. I don't think you know what good feels like. Well, I feel pretty good. I don't think you do. I just think that you're only be able to compare this. It's all relative. You haven't felt good before, so you don't know what good feels like. And so I say, I don't have a problem with tomatoes. Like, try giving them up for a month. Try stopping all plants for a month, and then see how you feel. It'll be a very different story.
Yeah.
And so, and then there are people, of course, Native Americans, Native Australians, they have not had cultivated crops. Mesoamerica has, but like the Plains Indians or the people in northern North America certainly have not had a lot of cultivated crops, and until very recently, until they've sort of been more westernized, and they get far more sick. They get far more sick than the rest of the American and Canadian populations eating the same thing. And that's because European populations, Middle Eastern populations, and other populations around the world in isolated areas have had agriculture for 8,000 to 10,000 years. They've had some time to adjust and build up some defenses against some of these toxins. And they haven't, right? So they're going to be much more hit by this. And, and it also depends on what nightshades you're eating, because the thing is that traditionally in Mesoamerica, when they're eating tomatoes, they would vine ripen them, which actually lowers the toxic load, because when they're green, they're much more toxic because the seeds aren't ready yet. And if you pick that fruit when it's green, it has nowhere, the poisons are just still in there. They have to be on the plant for those toxins to get drawn out. We have studies on tomatoes showing that if you pick them green, they retain all the solanine and other toxins. They don't detoxify because there's nowhere for it to go. Right. If it's on the plant will pull out those toxins. They don't just degrade and break down. And so then when you take that stuff out, or you pick that, what they would do, they would pick it ripe, they would take the skin off and they take the seeds out. Those are the most toxic part, and they use the pulp and they boil the hell out of it. So this all lowers the toxic load. We're not doing that anymore. Good luck getting a tomato or an avocado that hasn't been picked green, because they have to, or they won't travel well. Right. But that's it. So there's different genetic ethnic populations that may be more or less harmed by this, or people that have autoimmune issues or genetic issues. They're much more sensitive to these things. Their bodies react much more strongly to it. But also, people just don't understand just how much this is affecting them because they've never seen the contrast.
Here's a question I get a lot. Can you overeat too much meat on carnivore, causing your blood glucose to be higher in the morning? Thanks, Yvonne, for that question.
Well, as far as blood glucose being higher in the morning because of meat, it's not likely. You know, if you're eating predominantly protein, you'll get a bit more of a bump in your insulin. You could get a bit of a bump in your glucose, but generally not. I mean, the gluconeogenesis is demand driven. It's not substrate driven. It's not just like, oh, here's all this protein, let's make it into glucose. That's not how it works. Or here's all this fat, let's turn it into glucose. That's not how it works. Your body makes it to its design. Can you overeat meat? It's really hard. It is really hard to overeat meat when you're only eating meat. If you're eating carbohydrates, it deranges your hunger signals, and your satiety hormone blocks leptin, which is a satiety hormone. Your insulin goes up, and now your blood sugar is too low, and now you're like, oh my gosh, I need to eat. And then your leptin's being blocked, your body's telling you eat. So it's very easy to overeat in that scenario. When you're only eating meat, your body tells you when to stop. And this is how animals in the wild know when to stop. Cows just somehow know when to stop. Koalas just somehow know when to stop. I've never seen a koala pull out a calculator to figure out its macros. It just eats and then it stops. Same with a lion. And so they're not just gorging themselves and then they're just sitting there and puking and vomiting and getting obese. They don't do that. They know when to stop. We should too. And if you're eating your natural food, your body tells you. So things taste good, much better when you're hungry, and they taste slightly less good every bite you take until finally they don't taste good at all. And then if you keep going, it will taste bad. And I've had patients that have tried this because they're used to big portion sizes. And they say like, oh, but I get halfway through my meal and then it tastes horrible. It takes me 2 hours to finish it because I'm just forcing myself and it's horrible. And I just tell them like, look, you were done 2 hours ago. You know, that's your body telling you in no uncertain terms, stop. So you can overeat, but it's very difficult. So if you're just eating intuitively and you're just eating fatty meat until it stops tasting good, then no, you're fine.
Okay. This comes up a lot because there's so much talk out there about gut issues these days, antibiotics and things like that. Dr. Chaffee, how can you treat the overuse of antibiotics or with probiotics if you have high stomach acid because of the carnivore diet?
Well, everyone's going to have a low pH or high acidity to their stomach because that's our biological design. That's also another piece of evidence to show that we are carnivores. Is that carnivores and scavenger carnivores have carrion birds like vultures have extremely low pH, which is where we're at. We're similar sort of in between a vulture and a lion in our stomach pH, and so that's very typical for a carnivore because you have to break the stuff down. You have to contend with a bacterial load, and you have to kill this bacteria. And so, like you say, how do you take probiotics if your stomach is designed to kill bacteria? Well, first of all, probiotics in the can or whatever have been shown to not be any good. And that's part of it. You drink this stuff and it's no good for you, and just they get blasted in your stomach acid. Also, they have a lot of sugar and artificial sweeteners, and that actually promotes the growth of the wrong kind of bacteria in your gut. So you're not only not getting the bacteria into where you want it to be, that sugar and garbage is getting into your colon, and that's promoting the growth of these other ones that you don't want. And so it's actually bad for you. And so what you want to do is you want to have natural probiotics. and prebiotics. The prebiotics that are the food for the bacteria, and that's meat. Whatever you eat, your bacteria are eating, and whatever you're designed to eat is going to promote the type of bacteria that you're designed to have, as evidenced by the Inuit populations when eating their actual meat diet have been found to have an extremely healthy and diverse microbiome, right? And so it's nice to have that established, and they keep that from birth. But if you've had antibiotics, it's just the sort of world we live in. What do you do for that? Well, what you can do is take a bit of Greek yogurt, very low carbohydrates, and with live cultures, and you put that dollop onto a piece of meat. You chew it up together and swallow it in the same mouthful. So you chew it up very thoroughly, and that will drive that bacteria sort of in the little nooks and crannies in there, and you swallow that together, and that so hopefully is a bit of a Trojan horse that will get you past the defenses and get that into your gut. And so you do that for a couple of weeks, not a whole bunch, just a little bit on meat, a few bites every day, and do that for a couple of weeks, and that should do it. But either way, unless you're doing like months of antibiotics, you're in the hospital, you're in the ICU with some horrible disease, you should still have a lot of this bacteria. And the things that you're eating are going to promote the correct kind of bacteria. Now, if you have dysbiosis and you just don't have that right kind, then you do the little Trojan horse trick at that point. Some people even use fermented plants, or you can use fermented meat. That's some other things people do. I don't do any plants whatsoever at all. So I would just do that with like live culture yogurt.
Okay. A lot of people are making their own yogurt these days again too, so that's
true.
Cool.
Yeah, nice.
So sadly, we're at the hour now. You apparently have somewhere else to be, so there's still many questions yet. And I apologize to everybody. We only had Dr. Chaffee here for the 1 hour. You might just have to come back sometime.
I would love to. Yeah, more than happy to. Yeah.
So, but
and I'll try to schedule it when I don't have anything directly after. I'm very sorry. It was just sort of a schedule.
I understand. I mean, we've already kept you just a little bit over here. So, thank you so much for coming. And I do hope we can do something again. And obviously, people want to know about this stuff. There's so many people still asking questions down there. And I apologize to everybody for, we just couldn't get to them all. But this has been, I've learned a lot today. So I think this has been a great talk, and really appreciate you coming. And thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me. And I would love to do it again. I'd love to do it again when we have more time.
Yes,
definitely.
Yes. Oh, and Melissa has been putting links, or there is a link for your How to Carnivore Challenge. And we have links to your channel and all that in the notes, in the video notes. So thanks.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Well, yeah. I mean, the main thing is just the YouTube channel. I try to make everything available for free for people. I mean, I do have the challenge that people pay for, but I try to make things available for free. So
you have a lot that's available for free. So go check out Dr. Chaffee's channel. He's got a lot of information there. And Melissa has been posting the link to an ebook that you have on basic information as well. So thank you, Melissa, for doing that.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa.
Okay. Well, thanks so much. We'll let you get on to your next appointment. And, everybody else, have a great rest of your Sunday. And we'll see you guys next week for the live stream party.
Yeah. Great. You want to actually just do one thing? I'll just see if the other person has actually come on, because I don't know. We can always just keep doing questions until the other person pops up in my Zoom, if you wanted to, because I would hate to have this person just last minute cancel and then be like, well, shoot, I could have gone longer. So at the moment, they haven't popped in my Zoom room. So if you want,
we could take one more question and see where you're at.
Yeah, when we do that.
Okay. All right. So let me just see here. Okay, here's one. Have you ever seen any case of diabetes type 1 being completely cured with fasting plus being carnivore has been diabetic type 1 for 20 years?
Early stages. So I don't know if people can do this in after 20 years, but there have been a couple isolated incidences of people that have sort of still in that honeymoon phase where they're type 1, but their pancreas may still be salvageable. I've seen two young people that were able to do that. I spoke with a father of one of these kids, and he said that he and his son got on it right away and got on sort of keto carnivore right away. And after a year, he actually came off his insulin, and his doctors were amazed, like, "Oh my gosh, how did you do that? That just doesn't happen." He said, "Well, this is what I did. I went on a carnivore diet. That has nothing to do with that." And they just dismissed it after that, which is pretty silly because there actually are studies showing that ketogenic diets have reversed type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes in rats. So they actually were able to regrow the beta islet cells in rats and have them produce insulin again. And then so they say, okay, so this is animal models. We don't know if this is in humans. And so, okay, well, let's try it in humans. So I believe those trials are in the works now. At least that's what was suggested at the end of the discussion in the animal model one. They're like, we want to do this in humans now. So hopefully that comes out. But certainly in animals, I mean, so, the theory is there that this at least can work in animals. And I have seen it a couple of times. It's only been in that early window, though. I don't personally know of anybody who's been able to reverse it after 20 years. But either way, it's going to really help the control of the type 1 diabetes and allow the use of much less insulin to be required. And that's definitely not a small thing, and improve health in a lot of other ways as well.
Okay, thank you. And here's another quick one if you're still able. Can the carnivore diet help with hypercalcemia?
Well, it depends on the cause of hypercalcemia. And so, it could be, parathyroid sort of issue. It helps with quite a lot of strange little issues. I mean, I've seen people with hemochromatosis or, because things like hemochromatosis or things with hypercalcemia, it's not because they're eating too much calcium necessarily. You could do that. But if it's generally a problem with how we metabolize and utilize the calcium and the iron. And so going on a carnivore diet, this is what we're designed to eat. And so your body starts working the way it's designed to work. And so patients with hemochromatosis, and all of a sudden they don't need to give blood anymore to get their iron levels down. Their bodies just work. And again, before the 20th century, the same amount of people as a percentage of the population had hemochromatosis. Why weren't they all just dying and dropping dead? Why is that a new thing? Why is that becoming more of a problem now than it was historically? Probably because our metabolism of these nutrients and the different sorts of biochemical processes that we have available to us are getting deranged. And so it depends on the cause of the hypercalcemia. I haven't treated anybody directly with hypercalcemia, but I would imagine it's sort of in that same realm. So it's certainly worth trying and seeing. If it doesn't help, it's not going to help everything, but it helps a lot of things, and it will help a lot of other things in your body. And so even if you have to contend with the hypercalcemia, at least you won't have to contend with all the other things that you'll get rid of when you go on a carnivore diet. And hopefully it will help with that.
Okay. Well, let's just do one more here. How do you raise magnesium levels that are extremely low? Supplements have not worked.
Well, again, just eating a proper diet. So the thing with magnesium as well is that even with supplementation, it can take months before you get back up to more normal levels. So you need to eat a proper diet, and you need to get rid of a lot of these anti-nutrients in plants that will bind and strip out your magnesium. A, stop you from absorbing them, but B, can get into your body and strip it out. Coffee is really good for that, or really bad for that. It's well known that you drink coffee, this can strip out magnesium. Same with tea. And so you don't want to have this sort of stuff, especially if you have a magnesium issue. And if you're drinking coffee and you're taking magnesium supplements, you're probably not absorbing any of that magnesium from those supplements. And so, or you're just undoing the supplements that you're taking. So I would get rid of all of those things. I get rid of all these anti-nutrients, like in coffee, like in plants. Just go to just a red meat and water diet if you can, and have a bit of organs and things like that here and there. And you can. I think your magnesium supplementation will be much more effective in that circumstance. And then after a few months, you probably won't need the supplements anymore.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for staying a little bit extra to get those extra few questions, and appreciate it very much. And I'm sure the
not a problem.
Ask them do as well. So, thank you so much again, and everybody else, we'll see you next time. And Dr. Chaffee, I hope we get another chance to talk again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. I'd like that.
Here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Good night, everybody.